Extension 2025. And I will start out with the territorial acknowledgement. When was I just pull it up here? We acknowledge that the land on which our school and district buildings are situated is the traditional, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples on the land on which we gather today. And I will do an attendance as well. Chair Boland.
Here.
Vice Chair Humphreys is here. Trustee Doherty.
Here.
Trustee Gannett.
Here.
Trustee Kaiser.
Here.
Trustee Primo. Here. Trustee Rajamani, I'm assuming with regrets. She did try to call in, but had difficulty. Trustee Reddy has sent her regrets as well. And student trustee Grace Ding sent her regrets. And oh, is she here? I'm sorry. Student trustee Ding.
Here.
And student trustee Doherty, is she here with us or not, Kim?
No, I think she sent her regrets.
Okay. Maybe I read the wrong regrets. It's quite possible. Thank you. Senior staff, Director Nemi here, Superintendent Barnes here, Superintendent Poirier here, Superintendent Smith here, Superintendent Cronwald
Here.
and Superintendent Nicol
Here.
Thank you very much. I do need, you have an agenda before you. I would like to add two other items if you don't mind. 6.3 would be the report on adult and continuing education programming. And I think the report was sent out by email. Is that right, Shelley? Or
I'm actually just sending it.
okay, so you will receive that report very shortly. And we also need to add another one of 6.4, and it's with regards to replacing our trustee position that we have at the moment open. Okay, so I need an approval of the agenda, please. Thank you, Trustee Gannett, seconded by Trustee Boland. Thank you. All those in favor of this agenda? And that's carried. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest on this agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Thank you. So we have two staff reports coming to the board today. First one is a long-term enrollment report, which is an annual event that we do get information about. So we'll turn it over to Superintendent Barnes.
Thank you. Yes. This is the report that I look forward to every year because it's a nice sort of baseline of where we are and where we think we will go. You have had the report to review. So I won't go line by line and page by page, but it does show that we are, I'm just missing a page. Our total enrollment for 2024-2025 was 6,232 for elementary, 3,119 for secondary. And that then becomes, I'm on page 4, that 2024 column, which is last year's enrollment, and then the company that we use, Bargar, to project forward takes into account things like birth rates and other things from Statistics Canada, census data, and then projects forward based on our programs, so that you can see over time we are pretty static until about 2028 in 3 years, and then you can see that there's a slow decline in elementary, and that sort of aligns with those large JKSKs that we had sort of moving through the system and then going on to secondary, where you'll see from that blue column 2024 going ahead to 2028, you can see there's that increase and then kind of bringing us back down to where we are now. So overall, looking ahead in the next 10 years, we're showing pretty status quo. A little fluctuation between the elementary and then into the secondary, and then those birth rates pick up a little bit, and so we are there. The other page of interest I always glance at is page 5, and we have the color coding there, so it's looking at enrollment, and then OTG is that gray column off to the left, and that's the on-the-ground capacity. So for from the ministry's perspective, classroom is loaded at 23 for elementary, 26 for kindergarten, and 21 for secondary. And so they count up the classrooms, and that gives you the sort of capacity of the school from a ministry perspective. And then when you look at the enrollment projected forward, the columns or the cells that catch my eye are those orange ones, the greater than 100%, because that indicates to me that there's pressures. So I see that Herman Street, Beachburg, we have that little blip. We are watching Beachburg closely, but they still have an empty classroom, so we have a little bit of flexibility there. Herman Street's showing by percentage quite over capacity. However, there's a porta pack there, and the ministry doesn't count temporary spaces, so we're actually doing just okay. It's snug, but we're okay. And then Wiltshire is another one that's showing some pressures, but we actually had facilities a couple of years ago finished 2 classrooms. We put some windows back in and finished classrooms. So we have 2 empty classrooms in that school available for use should the org chart need that. So in the immediate future, we have 2 classrooms that are available for use. But when we're looking ahead, that's something that we're going to have to look at as an organization. So exec will be looking at pressures and options, and then as appropriate, bringing them forward. Beyond that, it's just a nice little snapshot for each of the families of schools. It shows the capacity, the projected enrollment. It shows the middle column is the enrollment in English versus the French program. And as you go from family of schools to families of schools, it's really just quite interesting to see how the numbers, sometimes it's half and half, sometimes it's a little lopsided in one direction and sometimes in the other. So it's really just a point in time of where everyone is landing at this time. And then again, that projected family facility usage is there. Really, that's all that I was going to share with you. I'm open to any questions or hear any comments that you might like to.
Any questions, comments, wondering about?
Just have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
For the Iron Prior area, does it take into account the possible school that's going to be built between Iron Prior and I'm not quite sure where, maybe Canada, regarding a French-speaking school?
Well, they did build an elementary school right across from AJ, and they are currently, I think, is it kindergarten to grade 3? So they are open. The French school, it has been built and they are open, and they will grow their grades, much like we do our French immersion programs, and it's up until grade 8.
So there's not a high school that's being looked at to be built?
I haven't heard of one.
Okay, anyway, I seem to think that there was, but
Okay, there might be.
if you don't have the data, I'm assuming that I'm wrong, but I just thought that there would be a high school built within the next 5 years between Iron Prior and Canada, somewhere in the middle.
They're very well may be. A lot of students who are choosing to do secondary in the French program are currently bused into the city. So I would imagine that they would then not have to go all the way into the city, and they would attend. There may be a small draw if that bus ride is shorter, but yeah.
I just thought there was a high school that was going to be built.
Maybe.
I know Ottawa Carleton does have some new bills coming on board, but I'm not sure where they are. There might be one in Canada, but it may be a K-12 school too. Anyway, not sure.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Leo, go ahead.
Just looking at the Madawaska family of schools, and the percentage of French immersion is just 5%. Whereas most of the other ones are anywhere between, like around that 50%.
Yep, and that was our last family of schools where French immersion was added. And so what you're seeing is just the beginning of that French immersion program. And as it grows, the numbers might change. But it was just started a couple of years ago. A few years ago. Yeah.
It's 2.
Yeah. So it's newer. It's not as established as the other communities.
So are we doing anything to help like increase those numbers?
Do you want to comment? So when we were looking at how to be strategic with our marketing budget, we did support the school in promoting the French immersion program specifically in the Barry's Bay area or Madawaska Valley area. because we knew that we wanted to promote it more than the other areas. So also it is, at Madawaska Valley District School, the program, the FSL program starts in grade 4. And so the families have to choose, like at the end of grade 3, they need to decide if they're staying at their home school or traveling, going to have their children travel to MVVS. And so we just wanted to create the awareness that there is that program starting in grade 4. So we used a more targeted campaign in that area to promote the program.
So the uptake might increase in the next year or so.
Good, especially with just as Superintendent Barnes alluded to, just with every year
Mhm.
of having the program in existence, there will be more awareness as well. And then siblings who attend and then their friends. So the awareness about the program will grow. Yeah. Jenny, did you have anything to add since it's your
I
family?
think
school?
that covers it.
Okay.
I do know all of the schools in the area have also been promoting through their own communication to families as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Just, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been to a meeting. It might have been a year and a half ago, but I know that the original numbers of students was disappointing because there was such a demand, from the feeder schools for French immersion, and that we kind of launched it and really didn't get the response. And I have a feeling it's because they don't want to leave their schools. But anyway, hopefully with what the director mentioned in terms of continuing to support it and promote it will increase those numbers. But I recall that the discussion at the table was that it was a little disappointing, the response when we first launched it.
Any other questions or comments? I always find it interesting. I'm still back on page 3, I guess, just looking at, how many surplus spaces we actually still do have at both the elementary and the secondary level. Equivalent of 6 elementary schools and the equivalent of 3 secondary schools is quite startling when you look at it from that perspective, right?
It is.
And there's really not much we can do about that at this point.
That's right, with the moratorium still in place and not expected to be lifted anytime soon. It's just, we can't.
And I think, to be fair, we're also very fortunate that our previous boards had lots of foresight in looking at what would make sense as far as school adjustments go, which I'm sure was not easy. And we know there are lots of boards across the province that are really suffering under the fact that there is a moratorium, and yet they still need to figure out how to get their kids to a school that's not 150% filled. It's really challenging. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Just because I was looking at that as well, and I mean, some of the numbers, they're more than just numbers. Like, for example, you can't close Madawaska Valley District High School where, the busing kids for an hour and a half. I mean, if you close Opiongo, you open up the families busing their kids. If they're going to go to RCI or now they can go to the Catholic school. So, if there's 411 students at Opiongo, we might only retain 2/3 of them because they might go. I mean, one of my grandsons goes to the Catholic school in Renfrew. So, I mean, they're the challenges about the numbers say we need to close high school. That's pretty obvious. And we did have I think you were probably both of you were at the last session we had in Calabogie. I think it was with the ministry about the incentives they offered the board for closing Opiongo. And again, they don't look at the logistics in terms of families and what they would do and where they would send their kids. And we would lose a number. We I think decided at that time we would lose a lot of kids to the Catholic board. So the numbers don't just, I mean, I know that they're low, like the capacity is low in almost every high school. But we're almost stuck with, if you close one of them, you're going to lose students to the Catholic board. And that's something that, just this, lifting the moratorium probably won't be when I'm around, but that's something that the board should consider in the future because it does mean losing students.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, the moratorium the lifted moratorium may not impact us at all, because
Yeah.
when we look at what we have currently and recognizing the size of our district, there's really not much else we can do. And you're right, you have to take into consideration the distances students have to travel. And
Yeah, I mean,
we can't.
if you don't have a choice, your child's got to be bused to Renfrew or Pembroke right now you have a choice. You just go to Opeongo.
That's right.
It's a 10-minute drive. But if they have the choice, now they have two options to send their
Yeah.
kids. And it is it's a large Catholic area. So
So numbers are important, but they're not the all
well,
and end all,
there's
right?
other factors that kind of throw wrenches into the
They do.
plans.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just when you do look at the numbers, they're fairly glaring. From the stark reality is when you have a budget, it's like a business. There can't be, there has to be an ebb and flow to it. And the advantage in many ways is that we have all these schools. Disadvantages is when you have to put a new roof on, heat them, maintain them and all that, it takes more of our budget. So, I mean, it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And that's why I really think that even if we could increase marginally our overall enrollment, even if it's 2 or 3% down the road, just in this next 10 years, let's say, that could be quite substantial. And I do know that the powers that be are looking into generally that speaking. In other words, if we do lose students, are they moving to Ottawa? That's a clear-cut one. But where are we losing the rest of our students? And I do know that the executive team and whoever else is drilling down on that. And it would just be nice to be kept abreast of that because that's valuable data. And
Yeah, and to that, Renfrew is a great example. Sometimes there's just no more students. And so Renfrew, the town of Renfrew has had a decreasing population over the last 3 censuses, 3 times. So 15 years. And the population is aging. So we don't have any more it's just an interesting population to watch. And so when you look at Renfrew and you look at the Renfrew schools, we're holding our own. We're doing just fine because the population there is actually decreasing, which is very unusual when you look at all of the municipalities within Renfrew County, or maybe even on Ontario. It's an unusual occurrence in the town of Renfrew. And it may not be like that forever, right? I mean, you need more people to have more children. and Renfrew is having fewer people consistently every time the census is taken. So we're doing okay in Renfrew. It's a great comment, Dave, is the numbers tell us where to look and dig in to see what the story is, right? It's just a starting point. So we're always curious, to your point, Mike, where are the students going? Why are there fewer students? Maybe there's just fewer kids. Are they going somewhere? Maybe, and it's important for us to know that because then it sort of lets us know what we have to do next.
And it's also good to know about the ones that are coming to us as well. Like, why are they coming to us?
Yeah.
And there are other things that we could do to encourage that
Mm-hmm.
because we certainly are gaining students as well. Okay, any other comments or questions? Good information, lots of things to think about, but we're holding our own at this point in time. And I guess that's a good thing. We're not looking at big immigration likely into Renfrew County, but you never know. In another 5 years, it might be too. And if we ever get Highway 17 built, right, that might make a difference as well. Thank you very much for that. Okay, 6.2 budget survey results. And I guess again, Superintendent Barnes, it's yours again.
Thank you. This is phase 2. So you do have the report and have had the report in front of you. So I'll just give a brief overview. Last year was phase 1 where the executive team did a lot of consultation with the leadership team. This year is phase 2. And that's where we drew up a 4-question survey, and you can see the questions are included in the report. They were open-ended, and the sort of breakdown and summary of the approach was shared with the established committees. Recognizing that we're in the final year of a strategic plan, that we have undertaken the process to build a new strategic plan, which will be released next January. We thought the approach was just to stick with the established committees to seek some feedback and actually sort of learn about the process of theming and working with the data that was received. And then next year, building off of the strategic plan as a foundation, it'll be a full reach out to parents and staff through a survey process that we will better define because we've learned a lot this year. So we did have 16 responses. We got responses from each of the groups that we reached out to. So it was a nice breadth and depth. Not too much material to work through. So that was nice that it wasn't overwhelming. The senior managers and I made use of an AI tool to theme and summarize and generate some good discussion. We validated that with the principal reps and executive yesterday. We shared that material with the group, and we asked them to sort of review some responses and come up with their own conclusions. And we were feeling pretty good that that was, not a perfect match, but a solid match. We also met today to go over that again and decide what our next steps are. So we will be bringing forward to exec a summary document that then can be used as items are brought forward for budget consideration and built into the budget. We were in our discussions today, because we spent quite a bit of time with the results, we were actually feeling pretty good because we thought we could take a lot of the results and put them in actually, we're already doing that. But people don't know. So that's an interesting bit of feedback there. And do they need to know? And how might we share it? That's worth considering doing. And so then those will be brought and considered by exec when we're sure if we're going to do that, what are we not going to do? And so then there's that whole process. And then there is that group where that's a really good idea, but unfortunately we're not able to. It's either the way we're funded, legislation, or regulation. And so we kind of have three pots. And then going forward, we are looking to provide feedback to all those contributing committees next fall so that they can feel that their responses were heard, and then provide that feedback where it was considered, or because, for all of these reasons, we're not able to do that. So we'll circle that loop back. We'll learn from all of that so that when we do this again with a much broader reach out next year, we'll be in a better place to work through, because I'm anticipating it, the responses will be a lot greater. And then I'm really curious to see, will we just have more of the same, or will we have more of many? So already looking forward to next year.
Any questions, comments, concerns, Leo?
Well, no concerns, just so it'd be interesting to see how this aligns with our strategic plan process, right? Because, question one, it talks about, prioritize the needs of students and their well-being, enhance special education and Indigenous student support, and invest in the classroom technology and materials. And then same with the other questions that you have, right? So from the 16 responses that you got, and then, maybe that tells us, if it totally lines up, then maybe we're putting way too much into our strategic plan and just go to these 16 people. Probably not really. Yeah, no. So it'd be curious to see, right? And it's good, interesting feedback that, we have gotten from this. Yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, it's good. Lots of hard work.
Go ahead, Kristen.
I'll just add a point that with each of these groups of people that were invited to complete the survey, we also suggested to them that they work with their group. So for example, with the school principal, we said you could complete it individually, or if you have a staff meeting happening, you could walk through the questions with your staff and then complete it together. Same thing with the union presidents, they could complete it individually, but if they had an executive meeting, they could sit with their team and do it together. And same thing with all of the committees. So for example, with PIC, I facilitated a conversation with PIC, and then we did one submission together.
Right.
Okay, so just to give context of how it was completed this year, the difference next year is that every person, every staff member and every family member, every union president, they will all have access to the survey. So everyone would have an equal opportunity to complete it. We are thinking next year that we would still encourage some dialogue before the completion of the survey, because the talk beforehand helps generate some thinking and some ideas before people go and complete the survey.
That's good. Any other questions or comments about the budget survey results? I guess I had two things. One was, were there any surprises that you discovered, anything that you would? I mean, a lot of these things I would kind of expect to see, but I was wondering if there were any surprises from your perspective.
Actually, one of the things that stood out to me is we're a large organization with many sites in many communities, and we have a large number of staff. And so I'm just going to pick on math, because I like to. So, but it's a ministry directed, funded position with some real intention behind what that role does. And so through the feedback, it was very apparent where that position has been in schools, there's great value, and where that position hasn't been in schools, I don't think the awareness of what that position, like the impact that they're having, right? So I think both comments were very valid. There, you know, the people who don't have the supports of the central team would say that money could be reallocated elsewhere because they haven't had that individual, you know, because those that do say it's really worth it, keep it going. So again, I guess the surprise for me is I think that I know that we have a lot of good work that's going on, but what I'm seeing is not everybody is aware of that. So I think that's the surprise to me is maybe, I mean, the budget survey results are really good for building the budget, but I think part of that feedback is maybe we have some more work to do to just sort of raise the awareness of the good work that's happening and the impact that it's having, even if it's not in your school or in your classroom. So that would be, I think, the biggest surprise.
So probably even more important as you go out next year to a broader group of stakeholders. Because if that initial kind of background information is unknown, you're not going to get potentially the information that you need or want.
Right. And yes, very much so. So that was a really good learning and building sort of and then leaning on that strategic plan that is being launched, right? All of this work that's going into it is setting the priorities for the school board for the next 5 years. So the budget should align with that. So all of that work has been done. So what are we going to do to say, here are your parameters in the strategic plan, and then the questions are within that, right? Because if your answers are outside of it, the trustees have set the direction for 5 years and the budget would follow. So it was good learning that way. I wasn't expecting that, but so it's been a good kind of trial run this year.
Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
I think for me, one thing that I found interesting was under what would you like to see continue? So efficient resource management and accountability. And then something that's related under cost saving strategies, sort of auditing. So in other words, assessing value per dollar, auditing processes, auditing our just financial decisions that we are making or assessing the impact. So those two are related. And I think we are doing that. And I think there's still room for improvement in terms of how do we assess the impact of different financial decisions that we do make. But I appreciated the fact that those were themes that came out.
No, very interesting for sure. And not always easy to actually measure the impact, right, of financial decision making. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thanks, Jen, for that update. Appreciate that. So 6.3 is the board report on adult and continuing education programming for 25-26, and you should have received that by email. If you don't have one, I think perhaps Shelley does have a copy for you. And I'm looking to
Thanks, Shelley.
Superintendent Nicol, I'm assuming, to perhaps speak to this.
I'll just maybe just give a minute.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Give you a minute to take a look at it.
So perhaps I'll provide the context of why this report is coming late.
Sure.
We are and I'll just, this will tie into the background, but as you know, we are in a formal program review of the adult and continuing education program over the last year and a half or so. And KPMG was hired to do that third-party audit, gave 17 recommendations. Superintendent Nicol and Principal Rakoski brought a report earlier this year with an update on the implementation of the recommendations to date. So for example, restructuring the principal position, looking at maximizing the revenue, right, through efficient timetabling, et cetera. So that was already brought to you. We were continuing with figuring out which recommendations we could implement through like a revisioning process for the program. And we are up against staffing timelines. And so we needed to communicate with, if there were any changes, we needed to communicate with adult and continuing ed staff this week. And so that took place this morning through a meeting and with a follow-up memo.
Correct.
And we didn't want to wait until the April 29th board meeting to bring you an update. So that's why we're bringing it now. Okay.
Yep.
So just to give you that context of, it's because of the staffing timelines that we thought we should bring this to you today. Over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, and the other thing I would add to the background is also from the KPMG report in 2024 that a working group was established, which included Principal Gagan, which included a retired, just recently retired secretary that supported the continuing education program over at ADHS. So a number of people have been involved before. Principal Burkowski and I also became involved too, just again to go through the 17 recommendations. So you'll see it at the bottom of the first page here, most of and followed on the back of the page, the different parts of continuing education, adult and continuing education. So in terms of currently what we have is we have the literacy and basic skills, the LBS programming. So those are non-credit bearing programming. And that's happening at 4 different sites that you see on there daily. And then through the co-op education and PLAR, we have 2 teachers that support that currently. As well as with the continuing education sites, we currently have 4 sites that support that. And you can see where they are right now. And it is done through e-learning courses, albeit there's a very small percentage of students that actually would attend in person. As an example, our site that has the greatest number of people that attend would be the site in Petawawa at Pineview. And today, as an example, they had 6 students, just to give you an example. So even though the teachers' timetables are full, very few are actually attending. And then just on the back here too, you'll also see that with the continuing education, we do support with extenuating circumstances, such as through the SAL process, secondary students that are in our schools. And in terms of secretarial support, we have 1 central secretary at Mary Street, and then 4 part-time secretaries at the 4 sites that the LBS and the continuing education exist. And you can see as well in terms of where registration occurs and how we can support through that. So in terms of the next steps, which is, as Director Nimi said, through the conversation we had today with the staff, but again, through working with the working group and then just basically monitoring, assessing the year, as well as the memo that followed. So the LBS program continues with the same structure and the same sites, with the co-op and the PLAR through the adult and continuing education. That again, it will continue next year with the 2 teachers. In terms of the continuing education sites, so from 4 sites, 2 of the sites were east and 2 of the sites were west. So we will continue to have a site both in the east and in the west. So one would be obviously for the east, it would be in Renfrew at RCI, and Petawawa again as before at Pineview. So those would be the 2 sites. We would continue to support secondary schools in extenuating circumstances such as the SAL process. But it should be noted though that even though we say 2 sites, we recognize and we're going to organize through the working group as well, that when there is a need in other sites, that the 2 teachers that work through the continuing education can go to those sites as needed. So it's not to say that they only can exist in those places. So as needed, they can go to other places as well. So that will be built in as well. In terms of the secretarial support, so that we would continue to have the central secretary, and we would continue to have the 2 secretaries, 1 for each site. For where the continuing education occurs. So one at Renfrew and 1 in Petawawa. And that currently is the number of secretaries that we actually have working with us right now in the adult and continuing education. There was a retirement that happened before Christmas and a recent resignation as well. So that's actually our workforce, if you will, in terms of the secretaries. The registration, one thing of note in here. So again, continuing to support potential registrants online. Through also our central office from the 2 site secretaries, and we'll also begin a process to help support people that want to register at the secondary sites as well, just for the initial stages of the process. So those would be the changes from there. Of note as well, though, from the October report, we also mentioned some next steps as well that included secretarial staff, just a monitoring of it and any possible next steps. So that really speaks to what happens next. So with our working group, which we're going to be scheduling at the end of April, now that we have 2 site secretaries and a central secretary, and we have the LBS program, and we have the adult and continuing education program, as a working group, we need to think about roles and responsibilities for them, as well as just in terms of how we handle registrations that come in, as an example, let's say from the secondary schools, and that information is shared with our site secretaries. How do they work that process? So that's part of the working group. The other part as well is in terms of the, let me just see my notes here. The connections with home was another piece that we talked about at the October report. And that's ongoing in the sense that we kind of have the two right people in this role in terms of Principal Rakowski and I, because we live in both the SAL, and supporting student success in the secondary, as well as with adult and continuing education. So we're constantly monitoring how we are able to support secondary schools through the adult and continuing education in extenuating circumstances. The other thing too that came out from the KPMG report, which again is ongoing, is that sense of community awareness because of the importance for this, as well as with recruitment and retention as well for being able to have students, because we recognize that a lot of people that want to access don't even necessarily know where to go. So there needs to be a sense of promotion as well. So one of the things that I'm bringing in here, so on May 14th, and I'll send you the email for this. So there is a pathways to success. So basically a community awareness for adult and continuing education. The morning would just be with the community organizations so that they actually have an understanding of what's involved with the adult and continuing education program. So we know that On Track is going to be there. We know the Family and Children's Services is going to be there. And then in the afternoon, though, we would actually have booths, if you will, for the different parts of our adult and continuing education, as well as booths from the community organizers that came in, and then we would open that up to the public too. So that's another example. We you may recall that there was a press release recently about our adult and continuing education. We put up some, for those of you that were traveling through Renfrew, maybe at times we did through some of our money, we put a promotion of the adult and continuing education on the Renfrew signs. And the other thing that we want to do through the working group in terms of registrations that occurred, and we see this with other things that, in our own lives as consumers, is sometimes when you register for something or you purchase something, you get that, how did you find out about us? So we want to track that as well in terms of where we want to invest our time and money for being able to recruit more people for this, for the program. One last thing as well is that, in terms of why 2 sites from 4 sites, again, we just mentioned that in terms of the East and the West, and we want to maintain that consistency. We also noticed that there was a very noticeable difference in terms of the in-person attendance at both, when we compared Renfrew from Arnprior and when we compared the Pineview site versus the Pembroke site. And again, as mentioned before, that idea though, that even though there's 2 sites, it's still many sites in all communities as needed. And I'm just wondering if there's any questions.
Questions, comments? Yes, go ahead.
I'll just add a couple of points.
Sure.
To sort of bring this back to last year as well.
Yep.
So in terms of the restructuring of the program, I just wanted to remind everyone that we added in a 4th teacher into the program for the 24-25 school year. So we restructured the principal role. We added in a 4th teaching position. So overall, we're going up by a teacher, down by 1 secretary. Yes, sort of, I'll say closing 2 in-person sites for the adult education component. However, the teachers are going to go and meet with students in person wherever they're needed. So they can do virtual Google Meets, or they could go just the way that they would go to Madawaska Valley. If they had a student in Barry's Bay that needed in-person support, we would pay them mileage to go and support them, even though there's no official site there. We're going to do the same thing at all ends of the board. So just wanted to sort of clarify that. And also, yes, we're going down by 1.0 secretaries, which is 2 0.5 positions. Those 2 positions are unfilled right now because of a resignation and retirement. So there are no layoffs due to this reduction. Okay, just wanted to clarify a couple of points.
Leo.
Thanks. Many years ago, we were really looking forward to the KPMG report.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was a lot of anxiety, like we had talked about, around that. So it's nice that this is coming to fruition, that, our program is now, I think it'll be stronger and better. And that, to have an extra teacher, and also to, when you talked about having SAL students in there, that I think this program, you know, is solid, it's gonna be here for a long time. Yeah, I think, you know, hats off to you and your team for, you know, bringing us this report and all the efforts and stuff you've put into it.
Thank you. And maybe just add to that, if that's okay, that the one part I did miss in here that I really wanted to emphasize was that the long-term fiscally responsible and sustainable program, which when we meet as a working group, that's our key sort of mission or vision, if you will. When we meet, we just remind ourselves of that. You know, throughout the whole working group process in terms of what do we need to do to make this, because it is important and it needs, but we need to be fiscally responsible as well.
David?
More curious than anything, but a few years ago, after COVID, we had a large decline in the adult education numbers. Have we recovered that, or?
I would say our numbers have gone up. So just since I've been here, last year's numbers compared to this year's numbers, I know the fall numbers for last year, so October 2023 compared to October 2024, our numbers were healthier this past fall.
They are
The numbers are looking good. What I would say is we are trying to balance the needs of the adults with the balance and balance that with the needs of our students who are under 21 and need alternative education opportunities. So we're trying to find that sweet spot where, you know, we're supporting as many adults as possible, and we are using that staff, that team to also support students under 21 who need alternative education. So the numbers have been like going up.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mike, go ahead.
I just like the way our director put it about allowing the flexibility of the teachers to be able to go where the need is. That's a real key.
Yeah.
And just also, Superintendent Scott and his co-worker, I just think it's really good that you guys are on this because you have sort of all the spokes in the wheel right at your fingertips. So you're looking at things on a very regular basis. But the last thing I want to say is, and I don't know the specifics, but I do think through budgetary restraint, I'm hearing that Algonquin College is getting out of some adult education. What degree, I don't know, and specifically what they have been doing, and I don't know if it involves our local campus here. But I don't know if that's when that's going to happen, but I know that they're going through some very serious budget restrictions. And I've heard through the grapevine that they're getting out of some of that. So if we are continuing to do what we're doing, we may be able to bump our numbers up just through their unfortunate situation.
Okay.
Might be something to look into.
Okay. Thank you.
And I don't know how much it has to do with Algonquin versus like the Ottawa campus or whatever campuses, but if it does have anything to do with Pembroke, there could be a shift in the need for us to pick some of that up.
Thanks.
Couple of questions too for you, Scott. So you met with, or you had a meeting with staff this morning, is that correct? So can you give us a sense of how this was received? Probably weren't surprises, because I know you've been working with that working group all the way along. Just wondering what you heard, I guess, from the group.
Absolutely. So definitely one shout out or kudos I have to give to Principal Rakoski's. So we wanted to make sure that everyone heard the message before they get a memo.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah.
And what Principal Rakoski did as well is she called before the meeting and called the two site teachers, if you would, the two continuing education teachers that were before, you know, one teacher was in the east at both Renfrew and Arnprior, and one was in the west at both Petawawa and Pembroke. So she reached out to both of those before the 9 a.m. meeting just to say, hey, even though there's going to be two sites now, just as Director Anemi and myself said, it's still, there's still flexibility depending on the needs. So I thought that was really important as well. And then we did the meeting, and it's a wonderful group. If you haven't met any of them, they're a wonderful group to work with. So they weren't surprised, to your point. The one thing that I would say they were very appreciative is just the process that we spoke to them before they get the memo. They appreciate the transparency, not only of the communication for today, but also just in general when we work with them as a working group. And so that came out today as well. That was appreciative. And there were a number of questions though in terms of why two sites, and in particular there was a focus on Pembroke. Why is Pembroke? And so we talked about it just in terms of the noticeable difference in terms of in-person attendance. But we also emphasized, which is what myself and Director Anemi said as well, is that there's flexibility too. So this is what we think is the best decision. But if we're noticing that there is a difference, then there is the fluidity to change if one site becomes more, more popular, if you will, in terms of in-person, then so be it. Then we will make that change. So it's not a forever piece, but it's in terms of the best information that we have right now.
So from the report, the KPMG's report, with the 17 recommendations. So is your sense now that we're kind of settled, like this is going to be all the changes we're going to make in the foreseeable future? Because I think has been one of the ongoing issues. It's just a feeling of not kind of knowing what's happening to adult Con Ed, right? So is this kind of settled now? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I suppose the answer is yes. And that part of it is also the monitoring. So as an example, one of the pieces that we monitor would be, in this case, secretarial. Another piece was registration. So as things change, depending on circumstances, then we may need to respond to that again. So I think, to me, I think reviewing this document on a regular basis is a healthy exercise, because there can be changes. We may be able to say that we're being successful with one of the recommendations now, but if circumstances change, it may be required to visit it again. So I suppose that their recommendations are not just in terms of 2024 RCDSB, but also in terms of just good practice to run a fiscally sustainable program.
Oh, that's good to hear. We need to have that stability at least for a while, but also recognizing there's some flexibility depending on the needs of the adults that are out there. One question I specifically had was around the LBS program. I know it's funded separately from the rest. And just wondering, is there an impact on the LBS program with the reduction in the secretarial support? And I don't know the logistics of how that kind of registration works at LBS. So just wondering about that.
Excellent question. So to answer, so there will be an impact, and there has been an impact in the sense that there was a retirement and a resignation. However, there's been a redistribution of roles and responsibilities to make sure that that can work. But to your point, though, the important thing with the working group is to basically look back in terms of, we're coming to the end of the year. So with the secretaries that we will have moving forward, how can we distribute the workload in terms of the LBS program along with the adult and continuing education program? So we were doing changes on the fly, so to speak, just when things would happen, then there'd be a redistribution that would happen at the time. But as we come to the end of this year, we need to look at it in terms of we know what the employment's going to look like for next school year. So how will we redistribute the roles and responsibilities based on that for LBS and for the adult and continuing education?
Now that's good to hear. I mean, I think most of us have met many of the staff that in the adult and continuing education program, and they are very passionate about what they do. They're a wonderful group, and it's good that they've been really involved in making the changes and suggestions moving forward. So thank you for that. Any other questions?
Just one more. Is there still a co-op component?
Yes.
Over the summer?
Over the summer?
Like Bonnie Bishop and that crew that does that, or
Not over the
not over the summer, right? Just during the year?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. I think with that, thank you very much. Appreciate the update on that, and it's hot off the press, obviously. So that's very good. Thank you for all of that information and your work on that. So, agenda number 7 is actually a closed session. So I would need sorry. Oh, I forgot about that one. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you for that. 6.4, which I added on, and I forgot to tell you about. Most of you will know that we were looking at holding interviews today to potentially replace Trustee Dobson, who unfortunately we lost in the middle of February. And we're pleased to tell you that we do have a winning candidate. And so Roger Clark will be joining us as a trustee for that area, hopefully around the end of April, early May. So yeah, so that will be interesting to welcome him. And he brings lots of experience and knowledge with him. So it should be good. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, now we're going into a closed session. So yes, I need a motion to move into closed. Thank you, Mike. The seconder to second anything. Thank you, Jody. All those in favor of moving into closed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Looking around to see if there's anything else we've missed. So with that, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks for board, I guess, right?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. We got
weeks.
3
Yeah,
weeks break.
Easter, yeah. I think we have 5 Tuesdays in.
That's right. So we're
April.
not till the last Tuesday of
Yeah.
the month after
That'd be
Easter.
nice.
So, yes, so happy Easter, everybody. Thanks very much.